right, everybody, welcome back. My name is Stephanie Michele Sweigart, and I'm here today with SpeechTherapyPD.com. Guys, it's 2023. This is a new year, a new start. It's an opportunity to really raise our vibrations, to start some new healthy habits, and to really pave the way for increased well-being. So who is with me on making 2023 the best year yet? Well, if you found yourself to this episode, thank you so much for joining us. I am pleased to welcome our guest, Renee Garrett MSEd, CCC-SLP, here with us today, because Renee is really bringing with her a wealth of experience in the field of speech pathology, and she's coming to us from Virginia. She has had experience working in the inpatient rehab, outpatient settings, the acute care hospital, assisted living. This is just to name a few. She's got an amazing certification I was reading. You're a certified brain injury specialist from the Brain Injury Association of America. That was almost a tongue twister. You've served on the Speech Language Hearing Association of Virginia in multiple roles, and you currently serve as a trustee for the Communication Disorders Foundation of Virginia. You are a busy, busy gal. Thank you for making time for us.
Yeah, no problem.
Well,
glad to be here.
Well, we love having you. Thank you so much. I watched your course. I'm super excited about it. It's a 2-hour course. And Renee, the reason we brought you on the show today is because as we are beginning to venture into 2023, we've been talking a lot in our other episodes for January about self-care, starting off the year with self-care, mindfulness, increased well-being, healthy habits. And we know you have a course on SpeechTherapyPD.com called Being a Caregiver, Stress, Burnout, and Solutions. And you say yourself in this course, this is a heavy topic that we need to be mindful of. And we know that self-care and preventing burnout, it's not just for the professional, that it's important for the patient, for the caregiver, it's for everyone. So, as we know that we need to support the caregiver, because ultimately when we leave, it's the caregiver that's carrying over the strategies that we have implemented. We know that there can be a lot of stress that they're holding on to, a lot of financial concerns, emotional concerns, physical concerns that can occur when we're taking care of another individual. And you point out that it's not just about taking care of geriatric patients, but patients of all ages that are dependent. And you so beautifully share in your course your own story of taking care of your dad when he had his stroke, and you were only 25 years old. What was that like in your experience being 25 and assuming that role?
Wow, it was very scary. I didn't have much of, I wasn't a therapist then, so I didn't have the knowledge background to ask the questions that we really needed to navigate as a family to make the best decisions. So a lot of it was just hitting the ground running, which was really scary. I did things I never thought I would do, as many people do when they're caregivers, whether they are a therapist or not. You find yourself in a role and you just sort of try to navigate through and figure it out. And that's pretty much what I did.
Yeah, that does sound very scary. Well, they're very lucky to have you and to have your support. So, I think our golden question that we have for you today is really, what are some strategies that you can share with us here today? Maybe like 3 takeaways that speech clinicians can use to educate caregivers, to provide support to caregivers, to try to alleviate some of this stress and burnout.
I think, really educating about what self-care looks like and giving people permission to take time for themselves. As a healthcare worker during COVID, I think we all really saw that as well for ourselves. But for a lot of people, they're not used to being a caregiver. It may be a spouse who has been the primary breadwinner or the primary person who traveled, maybe a military family. And it's very difficult for those roles to reverse. And so I think giving people permission to say, it's okay for you to take care of yourself first, because you really can't be available to care for someone else if you're not taking care of yourself. And that includes things like looking into what respite care looks like, if that's available, what kind of support systems and support networks, even as far as community groups or church groups or support groups through your local health systems are available. Those vary from community to community, but they can be very helpful across the lifespan. And then also looking at if you need some sort of care plan in place one of the things I talk about in the webinar is a former patient of mine who recently, well, he's older now, but he turned 21 a couple of years ago, and his parents went to court to obtain legal custody of him in order to make legal decisions for him so that he wouldn't be the legal custody of an agency. And that's not something we kind of don't think about that, right? So that's what when you touched on lifespan, that's one of the things that I talked about in there. Another thing is knowing what your state and your local agencies, what kind of supports do they offer? There's different programs nationally through Medicare. There's different programs through other agencies like the National Association on Aging. And then also individualized places like the Alzheimer's Association, MS, Multiple Sclerosis Association, all those sort of places agencies have resources and things that are available on the website. They usually have 1-800 numbers you can call to kind of find out more information. What kind of VA, the Veterans Association, are there benefits for former active duty members, and what do those look like? So I think knowing those as a clinician, then you can empower, even if you don't know the nuts and bolts of every little thing and the nuances, you can still empower your patients and their caregivers to look further into it by giving. A lot of people don't know the names of those places or know where to even begin to look. Mm-hmm. And I think for me and my family experience right now, the biggest thing has been to prepare for the unexpected. And, we're not attorneys, and I get that, but I think us having that basis of little bit of knowledge of saying, have those legal documents in place, know what those look like. Do you have an advance directive? What types of power of attorneys are available and what timeframes? Because there's certain ones that are valid while the person is capable of making decisions, and then there's others that take over and stay in place. So kind of knowing that. I have a neighbor who's had about 1.5 years now of a cancer journey, and her husband just recently saw an attorney to put their property and 401ks and things like that. They're a little bit older, retirement age, and they put everything in a trust. So kind of finding out what that looks like through an attorney if you have the financial means. There's also agencies nationally that will give you some legal advice, and you can look at those and see if they have more resources so that you can say, hey, these are the things that are available to you. Even if you can't go and pay an attorney $5,000 or whatever, you can look at these legal resources and see if it's something that would help you at least get the basic documents in place, even if you don't need a trust or some other financial protection.
Yeah, these are just some things that you don't think about, and then when you do think about, it's like, well, where do I go to? What do I do? What's my first step, and where do I find information about this? But that's something I noticed in your course. You have a plethora of resources in your handouts that you can download when you're watching the course on speechtherapypd.com, and you've listed a lot of different places and resources, right, for people to check into, because it's like, where do we start? Where do we even begin? It can feel overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think depending on where you live, like for me, I'm in Virginia, I'm at the coast, so there's a variance of socioeconomic status here. The hospital that I previously was working at was a lower socioeconomic status area. It's an up and coming area now, but when I first started there, most of the people that we served had health literacy issues. They were low health literacy. They were people who had been laborers or maybe even unemployed most of their life. They had been people that were farmers. Some of them, didn't have a high level of education, and that's not to say they don't have value. It's just that it's a different look than what we're looking at with a lawyer or a physician or a highly educated, higher socioeconomic status.
That's one of those tongue twisters. It goes in
someone who has a higher socioeconomic status. And again, that doesn't mean not everyone has value. That's not what I mean by that at all. It's just people are going to have different access to different legal resources that other people don't, and knowing that there's something available for those people that don't have the finances to drop that kind of money to get those financial documents in place is very important.
Mm. When do you recommend starting to think about that? Is that just when you have a diagnosis? Is that
It's funny. My husband and I just had that conversation today because part of what we've been going through, because before my mother-in-law really got sick, we had been trying to encourage my father-in-law to get those things in place based on a course that my husband had gone to a few years back, where it was someone who was speaking about their father's passing and said, my father had all of these documents and all the papers that I needed in one specific place. Everything was labeled in a file.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was the most amazing gift that I ever received, because I didn't
Wow.
have to worry and I didn't have to get permission and try to fight in court for these things, because that's the things that are scary that people don't realize if you don't have permission. So I would say, if you're a younger person and you have a diagnosis, then yeah, it may be beneficial for you to look into at least the basics of what you need. For me, I just turned 50 last year. Now I'm going to be, oh gosh, how did that happen? But I think, when you get to be sort of middle-aged, 50, 55, it's probably something you might want to look at, because my dad was 59 when he passed away.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Such important wisdom that you share. And thank you. Thank you so much for all this information. Thank you for your takeaways. I mean, quality of life for all and quality of care for all, is really paramount. And we are in some very trying times right now. And I feel like we need this medicine now more than ever. So you share really beautiful examples of, what stuck out for me was, if we're sharing with caregivers, ways to tend to ourselves, such as physical activity and getting extra sleep. And maybe if it's something you enjoy doing, having more social interaction, that's something that's important to you. Or something else that really stuck out was seeking out help if you need it. Don't
Absolutely.
be afraid to ask for that help. And, we think it, but sometimes I think we need to hear it and we need to be reminded of it so that we're not blocked from doing that. We have to be vulnerable and we have to do that. And it reminds me of a quote from Trudy Goodman. She talks about the redwood trees in Northern California, and she says, as their roots are so strong. These large trees, their roots are so strong, but the reason that these trees hang on in some of the most wildest of storms is because all of their roots are interlocking with one another. So all of the trees are holding each other up. And I thought about that, and she says, even in these wildest of storms, these trees stay standing because of the support that they create with one another under the ground. And that quote came to my mind when I was watching your course, because I felt like you shared inspiring stories. You opened up and you were vulnerable, and it makes you really trust the speaker and the way you were sharing. And I felt like I was brought into your family life, and you shared the video clipping of your father-in-law. It was just such a beautiful course. Heavy, like you said, it is emotional, it's heavy, but we need to have this information because we need to support and hold one another up in some of the most trying of times. So thank you so much for creating that course. Thank you for sharing it on speechtherapypd.com. Renee, where can people find out more about you if they want some of your resources and they want to get a hold of these things?
I do have a public Instagram. My professional page is renee.garrett.slp.
Okay. For everybody that's listening, to take a deeper dive into this course, be sure to check out Being a Caregiver: Stress, Burnout, and Solutions. And this is on speechtherapypd.com. This course is really going to explain a variety of concerns, a lot of different concerns. My mind was blown open on all of the different things that caregivers face that I learned about in this course. And Renee is going to take you through identifying resources and strategies so that we can provide more effective patient and family and caregiver education and support. So for other topics, be sure to subscribe to speechtherapypd.com. When you do, you get 1 year access, and you're going to get, I think it's over 800 live and on-demand courses that are available for you in the library. And if you're new to speechtherapypd.com, no worries, we got you covered. Check out the information below where you can access a free course and see what you think. We will be back here next week as we are answering more of those golden questions that SLPs and SLPAs are asking. We have the answers for you as we are bringing in more industry leading experts. So we will see you here next time, and Happy New Year, guys.